Wonka is Warner Brothers' new holiday event film. It's directed by Paul King, who did the really charming Paddington film, and this stars Timothy Chalamet in the lead role. It takes place before the events of the Gene Wilder and the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka films, and this is an origin story about Willy Wonka and his rise to fame. And just from the announcement of this movie, I was sort of worried it would be a cash grab. I thought it would be some cheap IP that they're mining for dollars. But this turns out, ironically, to be the very opposite of that. The movie is actually about how a company dilutes its product for profits, which is odd considering this is releasing the same week Warner Brothers is releasing Aquaman 2, but clearly they care way more about Wonka because Wonka got a flashy premiere, it got multiple trailers, it got some IHOP collaborations that look pretty good. The pancakes at IHOP, the Wonka pancakes, look good. And it got tons of marketing. Meanwhile, Aquaman's being sent out to die. Understandably, it's the last of this soggy, kind of worn out superhero genre, the last in its particular universe. But if anything, Wonka is a great film, and it's a new take on a classic story, a bold reminder that you can make these great movies based on popular ideas and do them well. It really reminded me of an old school movie, mostly with how the stakes are not incredibly high, but it's still very fun. It has the charm of the original Harry Potter films, just with the light use of fantasy and fun and a very Dickensian story, very Dickensian characters. Bottom line, I really liked Wonka. I thought it would be bad. I was not really interested in seeing it, but once I saw this on an IMAX screen and just watched the first couple minutes, it charmed me. It wowed me. It won me over. In fact, it's being released around the same time Rebel Moon's released, and I just reviewed that film. And what I didn't like about Rebel Moon was how none of it felt real. It just felt like Zack Snyder wanting to make a Star Wars film, but not actually a good film. It just felt like an ugly vanity project. Like when those amateur filmmakers get together to make fan adaptations of popular superhero movies, I felt like I was watching that with Rebel Moon. With Wonka, I felt like this was made by a director who wanted to tell an entertaining story, who wanted to have fun with his audience. Unlike Rebel Moon, which really just doesn't feel like a good comparison here. I feel like Paul King is engaged with his audience. He knows what we want to see. He knows how to balance tone, whether it's comedy, drama, especially how he kind of blurs the line between fantasy, as he did with the Paddington films. I mean, those films revolve around a talking bear. And this movie also has a bit of the magical stuff. I mean, Wonka makes these chocolate bugs that crawl inside you, hatch, and you can fly before they come out of your asshole. But that's just a small bit of the magic. It's handled so well and put into a story that's so disarming and sweet. And what I really did like about this was how every character feels very rounded, especially the villains. They could have been surface level, but they're not here. I liked how there was not one big bad the heroes have to defeat. In fact, the movie has several antagonists. The best part about them is how they embrace this humorous quality. This is something a lot of movies that are built for younger audiences do, and I think this is a movie for everyone, and it works perfectly here. It has a great sense of humor, and the light stakes, I appreciate it. I think Disney's been missing out on this recently. I mean, look at Puss in Boots: The Last Wish from DreamWorks. That movie came out about a year ago, and everyone was hyping that up when it came out. And for a very similar reason to this film, they both have fun villains. Jack Horner and the Wolf. This movie has Olivia Colman's Miss Scrubbit, who has she's such a purposefully horrible character, but Coleman and the writers and Paul King make her likable in this really unexpected and darkly funny way. And then there's also Tom Davis's Bleacher, and they have this great dynamic together. They're these Cockney accented, exaggerated villains who run an inn and sheet washing facility, and a good chunk of the film revolves around them trying to scam Willy Wonka and take advantage of him. And hearing this, you might just roll your eyes and go, this movie sounds like it's doing a lot, and it does, but it's a great kids film. It's just a great movie, and it's an adaptation of a children's storybook, and they do so much without really relying on that book. It's really carving its own path. You're with Wonka most of the time. You follow his clever ways of escaping a situation he finds himself in. It's very much an original Roald Dahl story, just, taking lots from the Roald Dahl books. But this feels like a new take on a classic story, which is appropriate considering that, they're just using the character from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory novel. It shows how Wonka started his business and what you'd expect, how he finds his competition in the form of three gigantic chocolate makers, Slugworth, Fickelgruber, and Prodnose. All those names are mentioned in the original story, and they get great justice here. You'd think these guys might just take a large part of the story and might just be these surface-level characters, but really, they are a terrific ensemble. The actors are fantastic. You have Matthew Baton, Matt Lucas, and Patterson Joseph, who's especially great. And they're just so slick and slimy and fun to watch as these three chocolatiers. I really appreciated how they are portrayed as these kind of over the top, buffoonish capitalist villains who are smart and have this agenda trying to stop Wonka, who makes this delicious candy he sells to anyone. Meanwhile, their agenda is they want to sell chocolate that's actually worse than his and for more money. So you have this, anti capitalist fable, but it's dolled up so pleasantly and filled with slapstick. Like, if it were a worse movie, they might have actually filled this with a couple of speeches and dialogue from the bad guy explaining their plot. But all you really need, and all the movie does, is provide you with these very fun pint-sized schemes where you get all the info you need. For example, Keegan-Michael Key's police constable is this cop with a thick New York accent. And they're in London, but honestly, who cares? It adds to this whole over-the-top feel. And you see how these three chocolate makers are trying to bribe him with chocolates to make Wonka leave town. So, anyone can understand the movie. I feel like if you're an adult taking your child, or even, your young child will understand this. And it gets the same message across. The movie's telling a fun story. I didn't realize it would be a musical, and it utilizes this well. Musicals can be very obviously staged and kind of take you out of the movie, but I thought the musical aspect enchanted this world. There's several songs that are all different, and they're always exploring a new part of this world, such as when Willie first arrives in London to sell chocolate, or when he's at the zoo and talking to a giraffe, or even the police constable song with the chocolate makers. Everything feels distinct, is my point. It never bores you. There's always something new, and on top, it's a very fun movie to look at. The visual effects are seamless. It's not often you feel the world of the movie you're watching and you can kind of imagine this place actually exists. I thought that was the case with this movie. The sets are wonderful. The characters, as I mentioned, are a delight to watch. Timothée Chalamet is excellent. I truly believed he had just done this movie for the money. When I first heard he was going to be in a Willy Wonka movie, I mean, who was thinking of making another Willy Wonka movie in the first place? That's the point. But they inject this whole personality here, and he really goes for it. And he has this great chemistry with this orphan character played by Kala Lane, and she's a great supporting character. When you make a project like this, you could clearly just hit the beats on the head. That's what a lot of superhero movies do. That's why that is kind of failing right now, that genre. It's what a lot of action movies do, especially with paying nostalgia and tributes to a subject. But what I like about Wonka is it never feels like it's quite obviously acknowledging the past or trying to make you remember something. It feels like its own movie with its own original characters and a plot that could stand on its two legs. And the tributes are there, and they don't overwhelm the movie. You have Hugh Grant's Oompa Loompa, and he's perfect. They play the bars of the song, and it doesn't distract from the rest of the movie. In fact, I was surprised, and I didn't mind how short of an appearance he actually had in this. Overall, it was just charming. It's what you'd want to see from a movie you could watch with your whole family, and in general, it's what many movies should be doing now, telling a wholesome story without bogging you down in lessons. It was just a sweet, great movie, and I highly recommend going to see Wonka. It was a great way to end the year. See it on a big screen. I saw it in IMAX, and it just amplified the movie, made it more fun. So guys, thank you for watching my review, and go see Wonka.